Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. And those of you watching on video will notice that, well, Stan's not here. Stan's taking a few days off and he's gone to sunnier climes. So it's just me. And I'm really pleased to say that Steve Kirkpatrick has joined us. Hello, Steve.
Hi Frank, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. This is part of the Spotlight series that we do on Frankenstein Chat, where we invite one or two guests and we talk about one particular topic. And you can see, if you're watching on video behind Steve, what this might be. So, Steve heads up a business called Intelligent Evidence. And I met Steve probably about 6 months ago, might be a little bit longer than that. And I met him at in Salford, and we immediately he started talking about the work he's been doing, and I really thought, oh gosh, this is really at it. This feels right. So I just was very keen to have a chat with Steve to understand how what the product is, because it's a process, a product, something. How it sort of was created. How well is it doing, and also then just chat about where might it all end up. Its application, I think, is the most important thing. So before we start, Steve, do you want to just give a little bit of background about who you are and your career?
Well, yeah. So my career's varied. At one point, I was a shepherd actually, but that's
A
an entirely
shepherd.
different story. Yeah, I was indeed a shepherd.
How long was that
However,
for?
my,
Well,
my,
how
my
many
prince,
sheep did you lose, Steve?
I
Before
didn't lose any. I delivered quite a few.
did you?
Gave them
Oh wow.
physiotherapy and all sorts.
Yeah,
Anyway, that's a
yeah.
different life.
No, but that's
No,
that's going to stick though. That is really going to stick. Go on.
no. So yeah, I'm Steve. I was a head teacher in Salford for well over a decade. Um, Always worked in challenging schools. Love working in that environment and really supporting children and families. And I was also a lead inspector for Ofsted. I do neither of those things now. I'm fully committed to intelligent evidence. But really, this platform that we've developed kind of came about from sitting on both sides of that table and really understanding what inspection means emotionally
Yeah,
for head
yeah,
teachers as well as organizationally, and then also understanding what's required and needed for Ofsted's reassurance in terms of evidence collection and triangulation and that kind of thing. So as I say, I don't do either of those things now. This is my full-time role, but it's been absolutely fascinating since we started in September. I think we found something that's really resonating, and I mean, it's funny because we have a business, but we also think we're adding a value to
yes, yes,
what the experience of head teachers, and I think that it's quite an unusual sort of model, if you like.
yeah.
But it really feels like we're supporting the sector and ultimately making a bit of a difference.
So, what I mean, what is intelligent evidence? It's easier having seen it, to be honest,
Yes,
than it is
yes.
perhaps describing it. But do your best.
So the simplest way of explaining it is it's very niche. It's very much about head teachers and senior leaders. And the easiest way of imagining it is, I think we all in senior leadership had the files of doom in a room with post-it notes in them and highlights, and
Yes.
and then you have this kind of like mental storage system where you know where everything is and how to get hold of that, and that very much sits in your headspace. And effectively, we have created a platform that supports that and does that for you. It's really a very fancy filing system in one sense. But in another sense, what we do is because we have the grade descriptors, because it's a criteria-based framework, you can put any evidence that you have in your school into the framework, into the platform, and we will make suggestions. We will suggest where it links to a grade descriptor. Now, one thing that's quite twee, but is absolutely critical, is we make the suggestions, the head teacher or the senior leader makes the decision because We didn't want to make something that was a sausage factory,
Yeah.
in and out one end. It's got to be
Yeah,
owned
because
by
in a
by
way it would just replace the paper, wouldn't it?
exactly.
Yeah.
And we just really felt that, schools were incredibly data rich, but we don't use that data richly, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
yes, yes.
So that's what we do, and we know ultimately, this is about kids, not about paperwork, and we know we are giving head teachers and senior leaders a huge amount of time back to do the thing that really matters. And I
Mm.
think that's the danger in the system at the moment. We all got used to the previous framework. We kind of had our ducks in a row and we're organized around it. And now we've got to reevaluate everything again against this new framework. And, this may be semi-controversial, but I know we're not required to do anything for the new framework, but show me a school leader that cares about their school that doesn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I sit slightly, I do get that. I sit, whenever I get into conversation about inspection, I always talk about, well, this is your self-evaluation, isn't it? It has a purpose in, informing your trust board or your governors or whatever, even if it's about publishing it for parents. But it also has a value for external evaluation. So I think that for me, bearing in mind inspection happens fairly infrequently, really, once
Mm.
every 5 years for the vast majority of schools at the moment. But actually I think this offers some sort of reassurance as well, but also opens up some areas where perhaps I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Can you just sort of, I mean, I feel as though if yeah, so if we were to say I was a head teacher and I wanted to do this, how do I get all of my stuff into your system?
It's really as simple as if you can upload and you can make a decision, you can use it. What we're doing is we're doing signposting really with examples. When you're in that inspection framework, and you're absolutely right, this has got an implication of self-evaluation as you run through, although
Yes.
we're not a school improvement service, to be very, very clear. Um, you know, what we're doing is we're saying, for this grade descriptor, you need to look at this document, and here's why. And here's an
Right.
example of why this is a relevant document. Because as when you are going through, I could do it for your own monitoring and evaluation, but when you're going through that Ofsted process, you're finding a thread and following that thread, and that reassurance around that thread gives you reassurance across wider areas. And so we're trying to make sure that for leaders, that horrible feeling of, oh my God, I've got to scramble. I've got to find
Right.
this. I've
Right.
got to get that. We're removing that and we're giving confidence. And whilst you can never measure that, I think you can feel that within a
Mm,
school
mm,
and you can
mm,
feel that
mm, mm.
within a process. And I think that's the bit that's really sort of pleasing to me as a former head teacher, that it's almost like people are kind of giving a collective sigh of relief of like, right, okay, I'm not going to get caught out. I've got
Yeah.
something.
Right.
And I think we're all robust enough, aren't we, to have a bit of a bun fight over what we've got in front of us, but we need to have the thing in front of us. And that's kind of what we do.
Right. Right. Now, so how long would it take then to transfer or to provide your system with the evidence that it needs in order to create these trails?
So it's how long's a piece of string, Frank?
Right.
The best example I can give you is I had a colleague who had an 80-page SEF.
What?
You can
Oh
read
my
into that what you will,
gosh.
but
True.
you can imagine the level of detail
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
SEF.
Yeah.
It took him just about 3 days to change the information that he'd had from there into our system, and he
Right.
now uses that completely. So I
Does
can't
it? Did
quite.
it produce? So sorry, cut you off there. But
Hmm.
did it produce a 5-page Ceph?
So we don't produce a SEF, just
Right.
to be very, very clear. We produce a database that shows you there's your grade descriptor, there's where you've
Right.
evaluated yourself. So it's not a SEF in that set. I think a SEF for me is much broader than just
Right.
Ofsted, but it's built on the bones of Ofsted,
Yes. Yes.
and,
Yes.
and the Ofsted framework, I should say. And so we provide those links direct to the framework, and then it's up to schools to choose whatever layers they
Right.
decide to put on top of it. And I think we're trying to just do one thing and do it very simply, but do it well.
Right.
And certainly that's what we're being told by colleagues.
So if I was, say, in a secondary school, a head of department, and I've got all this stuff in there, would it sort of provide, would the system actually do a sort of summary evaluation and then link it towards the framework? You know, so you could say, well, your best fit or whatever. Not that that's
Well,
it's all secure fit now, isn't it? But let's just go back in time.
yeah.
This is the best fit, the best alignment to the framework with the evidence you presented.
So as we sit here today, no is the simple
Mhm.
answer. We have been asked by colleagues to produce a kind of one-page summary statement. And there's no reason we can't do that.
Mm.
We have a route map and we have to sort of prioritize what our next steps are. And I think that's absolutely on the route map,
Yes.
but I, I'm very keen to under promise and over deliver.
Yes. Actually, bearing in mind it was only September when we met. You know, what I mean, you don't really get ahead of yourself, so you forget actually the purpose for the reason why the business or
Yeah.
the product was produced. You know, so yeah, I get that. But actually, going back to the head of department, so in effect, I could use intelligent evidence as a mechanism for producing that summary statement myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but also, if I was the head and I wanted to, you know, we've got all the heads of department, you know, all using the system. Do I have oversight of those who are not using it and those that are, or those that are overusing it and those that are not?
Yes, in the sense of you can see the amount of evidence and who has approved the evidence.
Right.
I mean, it's interesting what you say that like we ultimately produce a spreadsheet in essence of the your approved evidence database, and colleagues, and we're not recommending this, but colleagues are obviously using that in whichever way they see
Yeah.
fit
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's some rich information there that you can then
Yes.
develop and take further.
Yes. So would it be possible for me? I mean, everything in a way, this is reassuring, isn't it? That everything that actually goes in is controlled by
Yeah.
the school, and everything that it pushes out is also controlled by school. In the
Yeah.
sense that it's not saying to you like an AI product would say, "Oh well, you know, your best fit is that you're the expected standard." You know, in a
Yes.
way, that evaluation still rests with the individual head of department.
Yeah, 100%. And, some would argue that's plausible deniability. But, at the end of the day, we're very clear with everybody that it's your school, it's your information, it's
Mm,
your evidence, it's your children ultimately.
yeah.
And you have to own that. We will do the heavy lifting, we'll do the highlighting, we'll do the post-it noting for you, we'll make the suggestions, but you have to make the decision.
Right, right. So, so I can see this as sort of like going back to my head of department, you know, sitting down, you know, perhaps after school, just sort of ploughing through some of this. Ploughing
Mhm.
is probably not the word, but you know, reviewing,
Yeah.
you know, things and just to get a sense of where we're up to. Has this? Can I use this in sort of when I perhaps go and visit individual teachers, you know, to support them during their work or on a learning walk somewhere?
No, I think it really sits at the strategic level.
Right,
As I
right.
say, it does one thing. It does one thing very, very, very well. And at the moment, for us, it's that have I got stuff against those grade descriptors? Simple as that, because I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest worry at this moment in time. We on the route map, we've got lots of interesting things going on that lean more into supporting schools in their monitoring and evaluation, although we're not, as I say, a
No,
school
no,
improvement
no.
service. But we see there are quite interesting ways of capturing evidence because traditionally, evidence is what I call very dry. It's very, facts, figures, policy, that kind of thing. And actually, we've got a really interesting pilot going on at the moment where we're using transcribing technology to try and bridge the gap to the sort of lived experience of the children. So the example would be some colleagues had a gap. And when we say gap, we just mean you've not linked something yet, usually,
Right,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
had a gap around reasonable adjustments in the classroom. So what they did, which I thought it wasn't our idea, it was absolutely brilliant from them. They sat down, had a conversation, recorded it, transcribed it, and then uploaded it
Into the
against that grade
system.
descriptor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolute genius.
Right.
So we're really looking at developing or how we can develop that way of capturing
Yeah,
real.
because you could see how the transcription could be reviewed, could be reduced in length, you know, because
Yeah,
actually one of the problems is you were talking before, we're data rich, we've got too much
yeah,
evidence to plow through. But you could see how that could be helpful for case sampling,
Yeah.
um, whereby in effect you would end up doing the work of Ofsted.
Yeah.
You know, if
And,
that,
I think the and again, I sort of it's funny because it has we don't want it to be
uh,
a once every 4 year product. It's
yeah,
not.
no,
It's as you're getting new things in, you're developing that rich evidence base. I think we want to see it as a sort of parallel to what's going on in school, and you get something new coming in, and you just throw it up there. Yep, yep, yep. Thanks very much.
yes,
Next,
yes,
and of course, at some point, then when you're maybe getting closer to what you perceive your window to be, you might sit down and go, right, okay, exactly where am I going with this? Exactly what do I want to present? And I think the point you made before about it's a horrible phrase, really, but sort of controlling the narrative. That's the wrong way of putting it.
yeah,
But
but
you know,
well, yes and no. I
the,
mean,
the, the, keeping the information in the right space, if you like. One of the things that's really helpful is that we can tag, say, I mean, we're finding colleagues are getting 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of evidence against a single grade descriptor. Multiply that by 200, you're getting into crazy amounts.
yes,
So people are tagging what we're calling best example, which ultimately is Ofsted ready. So the Ofsted team are getting the first two, for example, against a grade descriptor. But when somebody leans over the table, takes the glasses off and goes, "Well, I'm not really there
not
yet. I
yet.
just
I'm
need a
not
little,
yet convinced
yeah,
yet.
I just need a little bit
And you
more."
go, well, I'll
Yeah,
give you number three and number
well,
four if you like.
exactly that, exactly. But most importantly, as well, the other
Yeah,
side of it is, as a head, you'll have experienced the sort of day two, 2:30. Colleague comes in. I've just had a really difficult meeting,
yeah.
but don't worry, it was all fine. I showed the team this, and you go, "What have you just shown them?" And I'm sure it's good, but what have you just shown them? And at least this way, we're sort of, everybody's looking at the same things. Everyone's got the confidence that those things have
Yes,
been
yes,
quality assured, etc., etc. So,
yeah, yeah.
it's
So in a way, in terms of development, I'm just thinking about going back to my head of department role,
mm,
that I could actually take elements of the information that is stored in your system and actually extract that and then actually just use an AI tool to do that analysis for me. I mean, I'm just thinking,
that
perhaps
that
like
will be
what
down to the individual head
it
to
would,
decide if
it
that.
would, I know, but actually, what triggered it for me was, I'd be interested to play around with what did the first top four elements of
Yeah,
the evidence that is collated, what what would an independent person, and of course it's all fraught with difficulty because it still requires you to do the review, whatever
yeah,
AI produces, it's still
exactly.
up to you, but actually as a lead, to give you a start, that would be quite revealing, I think.
Mm.
Can I just, put to you a devious sort of thing? Is that if I was the head of department, it came up quite negatively, about some aspects of the work that we've been doing. Would it be possible for me then to just go digging for other bits of evidence that I could put into your system, which I could then use to say, well, it's not quite as bad because I've put more weight on these elements.
Yeah, I mean, so being absolutely frank, if that makes
Yes.
sense, it is down to the professional judgment
Yeah.
of the leaders,
And I
and
think they're really right to do that.
you will always have kind of cuspy judgments in some schools,
Yes, yes.
and it's absolutely down to the leader to decide, right, am I comfortable articulating this argument or am I not? We have got a future development coming. So we just deal with expected and strong at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
But we have been asked by colleagues to almost have a tick box for needs attention or exceptional, but allow a kind of free form text area to
Right.
to articulate why you feel you're not quite there yet, which
Yeah,
is I
yeah.
think is very sensible. But that's again sort of come from people using it on the ground, which I think is probably something that we're going to do. But the bottom line is it is down professional judgment still sits there.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a kind of cast iron, you're absolutely this, you're absolutely that. And part of those decisions, as you'll know, are from the quality of the discussions that
Yeah.
you have with an inspection team, for example, or with a school improvement partner,
Yes.
and framing those discussions around evidence that you've agreed is critical to that, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. So go away from the head of department into me as head teacher, I can see those staff who are actually reviewing, uploading, just generally engaging with it.
Mhm.
Um, does the system have a trigger whereby it says, well, head of history's not looked at this system for 6 months, perhaps needs a little reminder that this
Look,
is what we're meant to be doing?
no, we have internal monitoring. Obviously, you have a dashboard,
Right.
and you can see, so we will, at a very sort of helicopter view, say, well, you've got evidence against all of the grade descriptors for attendance and behavior, just for example.
Yeah.
And then you can see the individual grade descriptors and how much evidence you've got against each individual descriptor. So you
Right.
can always drill down into and see exactly what the evidence was and what the evaluation was and peer review it and all that kind of stuff. We do have an internal process because obviously, different schools work in different ways. Some people like to smash it all out in 2 days. Other people like to do bits. Some
Yes.
people
Yes.
leave it till the call comes in and then suddenly, and it's very difficult to sort of monitor that in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But we do have a sort of internal process where if we haven't seen some uploading and approval going through, we just check in. We've got a relationships manager who'll either ring up or send an email saying, "Are you okay? Like, do you need
Right.
help with
Right.
this?"
Right. Right.
And 9 times out of 10, people go, "Yeah, I've just not got around to it yet. That's fine." Okay, but so we do have an internal check. But the dashboard, we've got a new dashboard coming on stream soon, and that will make it much clearer in terms of, okay, well, you've got this many at expected, for example, but you're missing out on this many to get to strong,
Right.
and this
Oh,
is
I
what they
see.
are.
Right. Right.
We've
Right.
also just changed since you saw it actually. We've now got a rescan and review. So once a document's in the system, you can then actually rescan it against the strong standards, or you
Oh,
can
I
either go
see.
down to
Right.
individual
Right.
grade descriptors to start filling gaps.
Right.
So, all these things are, it's continually developing as we go
Right.
along based on what people are telling us. And I think
So,
that's the right way
how
to
many
go.
sc how, when I met you in September, you were just, I mean, you had the product and you had
Yep.
some schools that you were engaging with.
Yep.
So, where have we got to now from September through to mid-February?
So the easiest way of putting it is that we brought on board more schools in January than we did in the entire September to
Wow.
December.
Wow.
I think, and I'm not trying to fudge, we are literally
No.
changing on a daily basis. And of course, we're now engaging with maths as well. So
Right. Right.
there's chunks of schools. We're somewhere between 130, 140-ish
Right.
schools.
Right.
But we're also working in over 45 local authorities.
Right.
So it's spreading. And the most pleasing thing is that it's spreading by recommendation. It's it's lovely actually, and it's funny for me because Graham, who's my business partner and co-founder, and our other members of the team, they've never worked in education before, and they found it really hard to sort of get their heads around the fact that we're not in competition with each other. And if something works, we share it. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
normally I'll have a chat with somebody on online and show them what we do, and they'll say, "Yeah, brilliant. Let's run with that." Oh, I need to get you in front of X, Y, and Z. So, it's not the way it normally works in other areas of life, but it works like this in
So,
education.
so
So,
really, is it though that you're really at the sort of edge of it? This is a new product that I've not seen before, and the fact that you're here is that I was very excited by what I saw, um, and that actually means that there is little competition. Do you feel as though if it's going to work, there may be competition just round the corner? And how you feel about
I
that?
think we're very niche, so
Mm,
we're very specific. We've got lots of interesting conversations going on around multiple different frameworks and different areas that we can lean into. So we've just launched our Catholic Schools Inspection
oh,
Framework.
right, right,
So we've
right.
got that thing of upload once, use multiple framework, all
Right.
those
Yeah,
kinds
yeah.
of
But
things.
also for me, it's around social care as well. It doesn't sit just within a school setting. This is
No,
every form of self-evaluation,
yes.
regardless of whether there's an external assessment of it. But it does have a place in supporting
Yeah.
that external assessment, doesn't it? In whatever
Yeah.
field.
I think the unique thing about education, and this is what we're aiming for, is we want to be the go-to.
Mm,
Like
mm,
people find something that works. It doesn't have to be the cleverest or the
yes.
most shiny. If it works, it works, and if it's good value, it's good value.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And we say to people, our whole business model is based on a long-term relationship. We want to be working with people for 10 years.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
that's how
mm.
we operate.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure as this continues to grow and develop, fingers crossed, other people will see that, and who knows where it goes. But
I really
the,
can see though, Steve, some real potential for this sort of just blossoming out in, I mean, apart from the fact that you may have more schools and trusts involved, but actually the potential for extending what you've
yeah,
already started. And that for me, that's the most interesting bit of it.
yeah. I mean, there are certainly without sharing them, obviously at the moment, in terms of commercial sensitivity,
Yeah,
that there are some really interesting conversations going on with people who see it in exactly the same way
yeah,
that you do.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Right. Well, if you want to know more, well, you just search for intelligent evidence.
Yeah, you can search for intelligent evidence. What we'll do is on there you'll see a book a demo. What I'll do, Frank, is I'll send you a QR code if that's okay with
That'd
you.
be great.
And
This
if
will be the
anybody,
first we've ever put on the
oh
Frankenstein show.
really? Oh, excellent. Well, let's
Well,
trailblaze.
yeah.
But what we'll do is we'll send you a QR code, and if people watch this and are interested and follow through that QR code, we'll give them 10% off straight away,
Oh,
and
right. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah,
we'll
that's
make it
great.
happen.
Can I just say that was not, that's a news to me, so that was not set up here. But yeah, that's great. Well, it would be great to have a chat in perhaps if the Frankenstein chat, I hope is still running in a couple of years. But actually, it'd be great, wouldn't it, Steve, to just come
Yeah.
back and just give us an update, just as to where you are with it,
Oh,
and where
fantastic.
this
Yeah.
journey is going to end.
Well,
Or
it's
will it end? It
certainly an
won't end,
exciting
will it?
journey.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. But thank you so much for your time.
No,
And
I really appreciate it.
yeah,
Thanks
no,
for
and
giving
thank you
up
very
your
much.
time.
And yeah, I'll put the QR code on the video, but also on the description on the YouTube video, but also on the podcast. I'll make sure that the website address is there as well.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
thank you very much, Steve. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the future with who knows what product. But anyway, here we go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. Cheers.
No problem. Bye bye.